Hello, thanks for checking out my video. Today we're going to be working on our fine motor skills with some grip and pinch strength with our glue. We'll be working on our fine motor skills with our scissors and a writing instrument. We'll also be working on a nice pincer grasp with these poms and also with the stickers to make an ice cream cone out of this brown paper. And these pom-poms will represent ice cream scoops that we can either count out to match the number on our ice cream cone, or we can match the color with the stickers. As we do this, we'll also be working on some bilateral coordination, just using two hands together, maybe to use our scissors, or maybe I'll be crossing the midline of my body. We'll also be working on our visual memory as we match color or identify numbers and then count out the pom-poms. And we'll also be working on our visual motor skills with the placement of our objects, either horizontally across the visual field or vertically across the visual field. So the first step for me in this project is to make ice cream cones from this brown paper. So I think what I'd like to do is to remove the rest of my items from my visual field area. Keep those scissors nearby. We don't need the glue right now. All we really need is this brown paper and maybe a Sharpie pen or a highlighter pen so that we can offer some visual cues so that your student can then connect the dots to make a triangle, which will be the shape of our ice cream cone. So I'm going to start by just putting a couple dots out on the paper. Remove the rest of my stack of paper. I'll just use this one for now. And I'm going to make just a couple triangles that your student can then trace along the dots to make their own triangle so that they can cut them out. I'll probably get maybe 2 or 3, depending on the size of the triangle, out of each sheet of paper. And I'm going to go ahead and start this now. So I'll make one visual cue there. Maybe I'll make one closer to the edge here, and just like so. And now your options are to increase the amount of visual cues from this line to this line. So if we were working on our visual motor skills but don't quite have the visual motor skills to make it all the way down to this dot, we would put a couple dots in between so that the distance between each dot that our eyes have to scan ahead is just a little bit less. So that will make it a little bit easier. And for this one, I'll just put one dot over there. And then your student can go ahead and trace along the line with their chosen writing instrument, and once they have a triangle, we can move on to the next one and repeat the process. I'm just going to do a couple visual cues on that one. Maybe your student has stronger visual motor skills and some pretty good visual motor integration skills, so you can just do the 3 dots. If your student has awareness on how to make their own shape without any visual cues, you can allow them to make their own shape. At this point, we also have a model. So if your student was working on a goal to copy shapes, we would have a model here in front of us within our visual field, and we could say copy the triangle, and then they can copy their own triangle here. Again, add visual cues as needed. And then, yeah, if we were copying, we would just maybe make our own triangle without any visual cues, which is definitely okay to do. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process for the next 2 sheets of paper, and then we'll have some ice cream cones that we can cut out. As I was copying my shapes or using my visual cues to make the triangle, I was also using my non-dominant hand to stabilize my paper. So that's a really important bilateral coordination skill that you can very easily incorporate into your lesson. So if your student is just tracing along the dotted lines with their dominant hand, but not using their non-dominant hand to stabilize, you can offer a tactile cue, maybe just rest your hand on top of their hand, add a little bit of extra weight on top. We're not pressing down, we're just letting our hand, the weight of our hand, just do the trick for us. And we're going to position their hand to the side of the paper, put your hand on top, and that should be enough to give them a tactile cue to incorporate their non-dominant hand to stabilize the paper. Now that I have my ice cream cones drawn on my paper, I'm ready to cut them out. So I'll get my scissors ready, and maybe I'll clear out my visual field just a little bit. And I can put my materials on the left side because I want to work on some visual motor skills horizontally. So I'm going to have to continuously look back to my pile of paper on the left so that I can use my dominant hand side over here on the right side. Maybe I'll just start with just a rough cut to isolate these two triangles to make it easier for me to then manipulate this paper. So that's a good way to really work on some good bilateral coordination skills, is just to make the task a little bit more simple. It doesn't need to be super complex where we have to cut out each triangle with this big sheet of paper. Just make the paper smaller, and then you have one shape to work with. And your student should be able to use both hands together, maybe a little bit of pronation of their non-dominant hand or a little deviation at the wrist, and then correct orientation of the scissors here as we go ahead and begin our cutting. Getting some good fine motor skill work in here today with the scissors. Now I'm just going to rotate my paper around a little bit and cut along this other edge. And again, I'm using two hands together in coordination. They're doing different tasks, but they're working together to complete the overall task. So now that I have one ice cream cone cut out, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these. So I was able to get about 2 ice cream cones from each sheet of paper, which gave me 8 ice cream cones. So I can do a couple different things with my ice cream cones. Because I have blue, green, red, and yellow pom-poms, I can use my stickers that I have here to label the ice cream cones or designate the ice cream cones a specific color. So if that is what you're working on, you don't need all 8 of them. You probably only need about 4. But if you're using these ice cream cones as a counting exercise, then we would go ahead and pick a number to write on the ice cream cone. So for today's purpose, I think what I'd like to do is maybe demonstrate a little bit of both. So for me, I'm going to be working on some good bilateral coordination skills here, holding my sticker page, a good pincer grasp to get the sticker off, and then some shifting is involved as I place my sticker onto the ice cream cone. So this is going to designate that we are going to eat the strawberry ice cream here, and we'll put all the red pom-poms in this ice cream cone. And then for this one, we'll call this one, I don't know, maybe a lemon sorbet. That sounds pretty good. And this one can be a blueberry. And then I'm going to use my green over here, and this should be a mint. That'll be good. So now we have our ice cream cones labeled by color so that the expectation is pretty clear. We should be able to clear off our visual field here and match the pom-pom color to the color of our sticker. And if we are going to use these for counting, actually we can do both. We'll just flip them right over. And as long as you don't glue them down to the paper, which is an option, then you can write a number on the back of these if you are so inclined. And I'll just make this simple for me. I'm just going to do 1 through 8. So this will be a good time to practice number identification and also maybe a little bit of tracing. So if your student is working on some writing skills and maybe working on, say writing numbers or copying numbers or that sort of thing, we can write the number on top and they can copy it. That's one way to do it. Or we can just give them some nice visual cues, which I think is what I'll do, so that I then have to go through and trace the dotted lines to make my number. So I'm just going to do that very quickly here. And for these, I don't really need to flip these over because I don't have any stickers on the other side. And once I'm done with this, I can then go back and trace all of them. So this is a great way just to incorporate a very, very simple idea here into this exercise. And finally, number 8. So now that I have my visual cues laid out on my ice cream cones, we can go ahead and begin tracing. As your student traces, it's going to be a good idea to incorporate your non-dominant hand to stabilize your paper. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, if your student is having some difficulty with that task, you can just provide a little bit of hand-over-hand assistance and some tactile cues so that they understand that they should be placing their non-dominant hand here on the paper to stabilize it. And then they'll just go ahead and use the visual cues to trace along these numbers here. And the space that I'm writing in is pretty small, so I'm really getting some good radial precision here as I've incorporated my dynamic tripod grasp into this particular portion of the exercise. And again, I'm stabilizing with my non-dominant hand, getting some good fine motor practice here with my writing utensil. And I will go ahead and finish up 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now that I have my numbers on my ice cream cone, I'm ready to glue on my pom-poms if I have, say, a large sheet of paper like I do right here. And I can do that just by kind of spreading these out a little bit, giving myself a little bit more space to work. Or if you wanted to, you don't have to glue them down onto the paper. In fact, we don't have to have all of them out at once. Maybe it's a little bit visually distracting for your student. So we can just do this one number at a time. Or if we're doing the colors, then we can remove all of our other ones out of the way and just match by color. So maybe the same technique can be used here for matching colors. Maybe I don't want to overwhelm my visual field here, so maybe I'll just keep the rest of these kind of off to the side a little bit, and I'll just work on one at a time. Maybe that'll be easier. But for me, I think I'm okay with having a little bit of a busy visual field for me personally. So I'm going to leave these out here, and I'm going to work on some vertical visual pursuits by placing my ice cream cones here on the bottom and my pom-pom selection on top. So I constantly have to look from the top where my pom-poms are and then back down to the bottom, and maybe even some horizontal pursuits as I scan across the page horizontally to look for the correct color. So if you are working on matching colors, what we can do is just use a little bit of glue, and really you can glue the whole area right here. It doesn't have to be very neat and tidy. So you can just glue this whole area and work on some good grip and pinch strength with your student there, and then we'll just match by color as we want. We can do one at a time from the bag, or we can spill all of these out across our visual field. We can spread them all out so that we have to develop a skill called visual figure ground to sort out the visual information that we don't need to locate amongst the field of similar shaped items the correct piece that we want to then go ahead and match. So again, if you are working on colors and matching colors, you can make it as simple as matching and offering one color at a time so that we don't have to compete with all of the rest of them, or we can bring all of the pom-poms into the equation here and work on maybe some more advanced visual perception skills. So for this one, maybe I'll just do one at a time and we can glue them down or not glue them down. I'm going to leave mine unglued because I'm going to also demonstrate how to use these if we flip them over. So I'm going to leave these unglued, but you can glue down your ice cream cone, or as I mentioned, you can glue down these ice creams. So we're working on some really great fine motor skills. This is a 3-jaw chuck. So these fingers here working together, that's what that is. A nice pincer grasp, maybe even a lateral pinch. That would be okay, where our thumb is kind of over our index finger, the side of our index finger. These are all really great fine motor skills to work on that are associated with writing. So this is just another great opportunity to practice those. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and complete the matching portion. As we're matching by color, it's also really important to communicate with your student and help them to develop some language. So maybe they have the receptive language skills to say, or to perform the action of, say, get green. Maybe they have the receptive abilities to locate the item that you're requesting and to place it within that desired ice cream cone. But we also want to work on some expressive language. So this would be a good time to work with your student to say green or red or blue or yellow. So we're working on all sorts of different skills here with just a very simple exercise. So now that I have these all matched out by color, if that is what you are working on with your student, then we would just go ahead and continue to do this. We can also use bulb tongs, which I left at the clinic. But if you have a set of bulb tongs, you can act as if those were ice cream scoopers and go ahead and just practice your kind of the same skills that you would use for cutting with scissors, and you would scoop them with your bulb tongs and place them in the appropriate ice cream cone. But I'm done with this color matching portion, and now I'm ready to flip over my ice cream cones, and I'm ready to start doing some counting. So I'm going to go ahead and arrange these in this order here, and I'm going to get out my other ice cream cones that I have, and now I'm going to clear out my visual field again, and we can do this one at a time if you'd like. So we can remove all of these ice cream cones so that we don't have to compete with all of this extra visual stimulation within our visual field. But for me, I'm comfortable working on this surface here with a bunch of different visual stimuli in my visual field. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this easy, and we're going to say get one scoop, and it doesn't matter what color it is. It can be green, yellow, blue, or red, and we're just going to count each scoop and match it to the number that we would like. So one, I'm going to get 2 scoops here, and we're going to go ahead and complete this process. as I was adding scoops into my ice cream cone, it occurred to me that there was another opportunity to work on some fine motor skills, a skill called nesting and a skill called translocation. So with these little pom-poms, what I'd like to see, this is a real exercise in manual dexterity. I'd like to see a pincer grasp used to pick up one, nesting it into your palm, and then using a pincer grasp to pick up another and repeat. So I can do this with, say about 5 pom-poms would probably fit in your child's hand. And once they've been nested into their palm, you can have them translocate the item from their palm using their thumb and their index finger and their middle finger to manipulate the item from the palm to their fingertips so that they can then place it onto the paper correctly. And now that I have my ice cream cones filled with ice cream, I've worked on my scissor skills with cutting out the ice cream cones. I've worked on some pre-writing stuff with the numbers that I've traced. Maybe I've been working on my pincer grasp the whole time with the pom-poms, done the nesting and the translocating. We've also been working on our bilateral coordination, just stabilizing our paper. We've been working on our visual motor skills, either in a busy visual field or in a reduced visual field, by doing some vertical pursuits from our pile of pom-poms down to our target, or some horizontal pursuits across our visual field, scanning for the correct target. We've also been working on our visual memory, just with identifying colors and matching by color, or in this case, identifying numbers and counting to the corresponding number. And we've had, hopefully, a good time. So I hope you found this video to be useful. I hope you have fun with this activity. And please feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions on how to implement these strategies with your students.